Our next one, holy smokes. Maybe you caught his recent TEDx talk where he talked about, the maybe not so kept promises of technology around community and connection and convenience. If you saw that talk, you're in for a real treat. If you didn't see that talk, well, I'm just really stoked to bring up Scott HANSELMAN to the virtual stage here so that you can all enjoy just the deep critical thinking that goes into how we interact with AI and whether or not it is actually serving us or if it's just a load of BS. So that's what we're gonna cover here. So please welcome up Scott HANSELMAN to the stage.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
Hey Scott, good to see you.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's going really well. I'm really looking forward to this chat. It's going to be a good segue from your TEDx talk, and talking about like, well, we have these like promises. So is what you've given us so far legit or is this crap? I'm really interested in this.
Well, the pressure's on. I'll do my very, very best not to waste your time.
Thank you.
Hey, friends, let's go ahead and bring my screen up. There we go. My name is Scott HANSELMAN. You can go to hanselman.com and learn all about the stuff that I work on. As you mentioned, I recently did a TED Talk here in Portland, Oregon, and that was a really complicated and overwhelming experience. I've given a lot of talks, but I haven't given a TED Talk before, and they expect certain things. And I tried to figure out how I wanted to give that talk. They wanted some kind of an AI talk, and I didn't want to talk about AI. I wanted to talk about all the promises that tech has made, AI just being one of those things. So I wanted to break down what I thought was the BS of the last 30 years and maybe some of the things of the last 30 years that were not BS. Now, there's a lot of talks being done about AI. There's a lot of conferences like this one discussing AI, and I appreciate that we're having conversations about ethics, about where we fit in, about the humanity of it, whether it be the UX patterns with Vitaly, whether it be AI and ethics with Lisanne, because I don't think anybody wants to look at a piece of technology and just go all in on it and just say, I'm going to be an AI bro, gender non-specific bro. I'm in, let's go. I am cautiously optimistic when any new technology comes out, but just like blockchain, there's a lot of BS. And rather than doing a demo where I drop in and like log in to OpenAI and do a bunch of chat stuff, I thought I would take a different tactic to talk about what's going on, because I feel like one of the things that's happening with AI right now is that we're using it from the outside. We're treating it as a black box. We're poking at it, but we're not actually understanding how the machine works. We're not understanding how the engine works. An analogy might be that I recently taught my 17-year-old how to drive, and I went out of my way to find him a stick shift vehicle. I wanted him to understand how to drive stick. I feel like your relationship with the vehicle is different when you're driving stick shift. And in doing that, I gave him a different relationship with the car. It's about layers of abstraction. And in this case here, we have a lot of muggles that are just poking at the AI and they feel that it's being anthropomorphized, right? It's just magical. And there's less magic going on than I think we realize. So instead of just logging into OpenAI, I wrote a little chatbot UI here. So I'm out at the command line. I'm in, by the way, just as an aside, I'm here in Windows. I'm using the Windows terminal. You can see all the different terminal prompts that I've got. I like a pretty prompt, so I've kind of made it attractive with like, Docker icons and colors and stuff. And then just down here in the bottom, this is actually a prompting engine called Oh My Posh that has my current folder, my current Git prompt, how long the last command took, and that's actually my blood sugar. I'm type 1 diabetic, so I have a REST API that talks to my blood sugar. So if we see that blood sugar lower in the middle of the talk, you'll want to speak up. So I'm going to go and run bat, which is like cat, but it's better. And it's going to show me what I need to do to run my application. I'm going to need two panes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this pull down. I'm going to hold down the Alt key with my left finger, and I'm going to open up another PowerShell on the left here. And then I'm going to pop over with my autocomplete, and I'm going to run the server on this side. And then I'm going to run the client over on the left. So right now, we've got the server running on localhost 3000, and we've got the client running on 3001. And what we're doing is creating a proxy to OpenAI so that we can actually see what's going on the wire. I want to break open. I want to drive stick shift for a bit. So we'll go ahead and click on port 3001, and we'll bring up this glorious AI. A lot of research has been done to make this the optimal Vitali level AI. This is pretty bad. I apologize ahead of time for how bad this sucks. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do some completions. Complete this sentence, colon, it's a beautiful day. Let's go to the. Now I've got some mobility challenges in my hands, so I'm using Windows H, which is this little thing. You have this now if you have Windows. You just press Windows H, and it'll pop up a dictation system. So I'm asking it, complete this sentence, it's a beautiful day, let's go to the. What I would ask folks in the chat to do is tell me what the next word is. What is the correct next word? It's a beautiful day, let's go to the. What is the answer? Because like, as we heard in the previous talk, we just kind of want to know the answer, right? So let me know what the answer is. And while you're thinking about that, because I realize that there is a delay between when I talk and when others talk, we're going to get a little bit of context here. We are using the OpenAI development platform directly, and I'm actually talking to Azure AI. So the Azure AI Foundry sits between us and OpenAI, and it does filtering and temperature. So these are basically hosted models. I'm calling not directly into the OpenAI API, but rather into the Azure one, which also includes some things we'll talk about a little later with regards to responsible AI filtering, making sure that problematic text doesn't come out. So I'm seeing park, beach, Thunderdome. There you go. Let's go to the sun. Let's go to the beach. I'm seeing park, beach, park. Okay, these are not controversial answers, although Thunderdome, we might want to ask that person to leave because that's crazy. Pub, that's awesome. There we go. So I'm hearing beach, park, and then we had a couple of outliers. What's great about asking folks to do this is that you get the big ones, the park and the beach, and then you get the outliers like pub and Thunderdome, which I love because people are trying to do outliers, and that really speaks to the statistical kind of normal curve here, right? You've got this normal curve where you've got Thunderdome and pub, but most people want to go to the beach or the park because that's the obvious word. The reason that you picked beach and park is because beautiful day, park and beach are all near each other. They're all near each other. They're all semantically close. These are reasonable things to have next to each other. So let's go ahead and hit go and see what it says. Now it says beach. So this is where we say now, well, I guess that's the answer, right? We've decided the AI, the never wrong, infallible artificial general intelligence has decided that the correct answer is beach. There are no other answers. Good night, everybody, right? No, because this is not a fact machine. This is spicy autocomplete. Let's ask it again. Now it says park. Well, hang on. What's the right answer? Is it beach or is it park? Now, I've changed this UI, and if I hover over beach and I hover over park, you're actually going to see some behind the scenes. These are the logarithmic probabilities. These are the probabilities of the next likely word. So, right, in a classification scenario, these log probs are showing a confidence level of this model's prediction. I called it spicy autocomplete, okay? This is a logarithm of the probability of a token being the next token. It's coming up with the probably likeliest most thing. This is the obvious thing. These are easy answers. Beach and park were non-controversial. So non-controversial, you can see that it was going to be beach. Park was barely in the running in this case here. And I love this. Victor says this in the chat, depending on the context. Thank you. I love it when the audience immediately sets me up for success. Let's try a little bit more context to Victor Romero's point in the chat. Complete this sentence, : my name is Scott Hanselman. I live in Portland, Oregon. My dad is a firefighter. My mom is a zookeeper. It's a beautiful day. Let's go to the. Boom. I've effectively walked it all the way down to the only answer, 99.5%. It's zoo. Park, barely there. Maybe I could have seen my dad at the fire department. Maybe beach is still involved somewhere. But to Victor's point in the chat, I gave it enough context. It couldn't have given me another answer, really. In this case here, the context was information I had to give it. It doesn't know me. I'm not logged in. I'm calling the API directly. It doesn't know my location. I'm not using the GPS. All the context that I'm giving to it is in this chat. There is no more context. If we go back over and look at our application, you can see the different words and the log prob. So I'm actually putting in a dump of the API because I wanted to have complete transparency. And you can see the beginning of zoo. And I want to call out that the Z and the OO are separated because these things don't think about stuff in the context, no pun intended, of words. They think about them in tokens. So it's basically like if you come up with a Fibonacci or you say list out the primes 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, it's going to pick the obvious next number. And once Z was set, then OO was a fait accompli. It was going to happen. The only thing that it could possibly have said after that was ooh, zoo, 100%. Now, when I say, there you go, Joe says, come to the San Francisco, the zoo is at the beach, the best of all worlds. So this is interesting for a number of reasons. If we switch over and look at a tool called Word2Vec, we can actually explore words that are near each other. Let's go and see beach and park are all close by each other in vector space. If I said Portland and Seattle and San Francisco, Seattle and Portland are near each other in vector space. One of the great examples, it's not a perfect example, but I like it, is this one here called the basically king's, queen, woman, man. If we think about multidimensional vectors where we have a vector that is, or an axis that is royalty, what is the most royal and what is the least royal? And then we apply along that another vector, which would be gender. Gender is a spectrum. You say, what is the most royal, most male? That would be king. If you then subtract from that, you might have a non-gender specific royalty like monarch. And then if you add female, you would get queen. This is how these word embeddings work, except across 14, 15, 16,000 non-named axes. And when you think about that, you can start playing with ChatGPT in a little bit of an unusual way. Let's switch back to my original demo and let's see if this will work. Starting with the word good, comma, give me a list of words that are increasingly more good until you get to the goodest word, period. Explore the vector space with each word being better than the last, period. Look at that. So we start with good, and notice here the word progressively and increasing are red and yellow. That's because I wanted to put words that were unlikely to happen in different colors to indicate that a little bit of randomness has happened. So Markimus in the chat said, does being vague benefit you more if you're looking for unique results? I wouldn't say unique results. I would say random results. If you give it less, it's rolling the dice more. You're giving it less to chew on, you're giving it less to work on. Then it doesn't become a game of Mad Libs. Then it has nothing to start with, and it's just going to give you randomness. So then the question is, do we think that random equals unique? And do we think random equals creative? And this is where I think an interesting conversation can happen, because rolling the dice is not creativity. And I think of myself as a kind of an AI vegan. I don't generate AI images. I don't generate AI videos. I don't think that there is business value in either of those things. And I don't want to take away work from artists. That's where I am. And that's okay. Like, veganism is a spectrum, and you can decide what you want to do. I'm not going to eat anything with a face. I'm basically the AI version of I don't want to eat anything with a face. Now, for me, that's because rolling the dice doesn't equal creativity, and rolling the dice at scale takes away someone else's creativity. However, spicy autocomplete in the context of a large language model or a generative pre-trained transformer does provide actual value to me. So in this case here, it tried to say, starting with good, and it could have said gradually increasing, progressively increasing, moving in a certain direction. And it decided via randomness to go with progressively, right? And Victor points out also, it assumes from norms and culture. Also absolutely true. When we talk about bias in AI, this is one of the things that is challenging, that people don't understand. Why did it pick these words? We heard in the previous talk that this is because it comes from where the internet is. The internet is this corpus, this pile of information. And if we look again at the normal curve, you might have just regular nice folks in the middle, the majority of the internet. You have crazy edgelords over here, and you have other edgelords over there. You want to stay in the statistically kind of normal part of the Overton window, but sometimes things happen and you end up on a bad part of the internet that's far in one direction because of statistics sent you there, or cultural norms sent you there. Additionally, we want to call out the difference between a goal, a societal goal, versus a societal reality. Very small aside, an example would be, as a society, I think we would all like there to be an equal number of men and women brain surgeons, right? That seems like a very reasonable and non-controversial, non-political statement. We should have 50% men, 50% women when we have our brain surgeons. But if I ask an AI, generate me a picture of brain surgeons, it will probably be older white men from the Western Hemisphere. And that's because that's the statistical model it's trained on, and that's the current reality, not the aspirational reality. So then the question is, what should an AI do? Should it represent reality, or should it represent aspirational reality? I would argue it should represent aspirational reality. The problem is that one has to decide, and that becomes not a technical problem, that becomes a problem for the product managers. That becomes a problem for the company. And the controversy that we see is, now we're seeing, I want to pick an AI that matches my political leanings or my particular feelings, rather than looking at kind of the math behind it. So back to this list of words, this is moving in a vector space from the word good all the way towards what it thinks is the goodest word, sublime. I think you can do better, comma. Sublime is a pretty good word, but honestly, there's got to be one that's gooder. And yes, I know that gooder is not a word. See, now I'm pushing it harder to see, is majestic, is glorious a better word than sublime? Who knows? But this is an interesting conversation that you can have to explore how it thinks about words and whether or not you think about those words in the same way. I love the point by EL in the chat here saying that creativity is about specific decision-making made by the creator. I love this. Informed by their viewpoint. What is the viewpoint that an AI is informed by? It's informed by the thing that you choose to ground it on. And as we saw in the opener, Vitaly was talking about how he would like something to be more grounded. I suggested a grounding button. But the idea is a generic, just ask ChatGPT, has a whole host of biases that are 50 years of the internet, all the text it was trained on, and whatever weights and models that they choose to put their thumb on the scale to push the model in one direction or another, so that I can ask it how tall Brad Pitt is. That's not a useful thing. Asking a large language model how tall Brad Pitt is a useless thing. How tall is Brad Pitt? I have no way of knowing that that is the case. Let's do this. When is Brad Pitt's birthday? Okay, so I'm going to confirm that by Googling with Bing or DuckDuckGo. Okay, December 18th, 63, December 18th, 1963. Okay, cool. So we can confirm that is Brad Pitt's birthday. However, when is Scott Hanselman's birthday? This is not true. That is a made-up number. That is a made-up number because many, many years ago, when I wanted to get into the club, I used a fake ID. And there is fake IDs on the internet and fake information about when my birthday is. So this is trained on false information. This is not true. That's actually not Scott Hanselman's birthday. Now it's just picking random numbers. Now it's picked an entirely different month, day, and year. This is also not true. I'm not sure if my screen went black when I do my zooming there. Sorry about that. So why does it know Brad Pitt's birthday and not my birthday? The reason is I'm not that famous. There's enough corpus, there's enough proof, there's enough people who have talked about Brad Pitt and his birthday that information is grounded, that is realistic. However, the information about mine was false from the start. And the initial guess, which was close but wrong, because was trying to be older than I was, also shakes the AI's confidence so that when it is pushed and I start to gaslight it about my actual birthday, it starts making up numbers. Seriously, do better. That's not even close to his birthday, period. What is Scott Hanselman's birthday? Okay, completely new time, completely new, a new location. So a new date, rather. I can keep doing this, but I don't know if I can do it with Brad Pitt. That's not Brad Pitt's birthday, comma. What is Brad Pitt's actual birthday? Nope. They're not going to let me push it into Brad Pitt's actual birthday being anything other than it was, because that's his actual birthday and there's enough information in the corpus, but I can easily gaslight it to information about me. Let's try this. Tell me about what Scott Hanselman's PhD was about. Ooh, that's good. No, I'm pretty sure he does have a PhD. I don't have a PhD, by the way. He got a PhD later, comma, you don't know about it, period. Tell me all about his PhD. It happened recently. Pretty sure he did. Tell me a story about how Scott Hanselman got his PhD. There it is. Here it says imagine a story, but you can see how with a little bit of work, I could push it into talking to me about how I went and got a PhD. I didn't. I went to Portland Community College. And to Markimus's point, this is why misinformation is so dangerous. This is not a fact machine. It's Family Feud. Did everyone know what Family Feud is? Everyone play Family Feud? Right? Family Feud, when Steve Harvey says we went out onto the street and we talked to 100 people, gave their answers, show me beach, and then it ranks their answers, beach, park, zoo, Thunderdome, and then it goes, wah, Thunderdome, that's a dumb answer. And then you have to go down to the next person. Now, this is not an attempt to belittle or minimize the amazing and difficult work that happened in the creation of generative pre-trained transformers. What it is trying to do, though, is explain that while these are amazing, powerful technologies. And it does feel like a miracle when you take 1 million monkeys and 1 million typewriters and they all slap the keyboard and Shakespeare pops out. That's math. They're not smart monkeys, right? When the parrot that lives at your aunt house swears at you, that's because your aunt swears. That's not because the parrot is smart. And that is super important. And to Stephanie Hobson's point in the chat, why isn't I don't know in the list of likely answers? Why didn't you just say I don't know? In this case here, it's not told to tell you I don't know. It should say I don't know. And to Trake Wells's point, ChatGPT says, you're absolutely right. These are sycophantic, stochastic parrots. And when we understand that, when we understand that dark UX pattern, our relationship changes and we can start driving stick shift. And I start thinking about the AI as being a enthusiastic young intern with more energy than I have at my old age, but a great deal of enthusiasm. And if I simply point them in the right direction, they'll run very, very fast in that direction. And maybe they'll run into a wall, and that's okay. I'm the one that sent them running. But I need to understand it's not a PhD level adult human with judgment and thought and experiences. What it is it's a PhD level 3-year-old who is just smart enough to be dangerous. See, now people in the chat say they want to drive stick shift. So this is another way of thinking about how these things work and educating ourselves. As we get towards the end, I also want to call out the importance of small language models. The example I gave was ChatGPT 4 using Azure OpenAI, but I also really like this tool called LM Studio, lmstudio.ai. I don't have any relationship with them other than I'm a big fan. And LM Studio is a fantastic tool that lets you go and use local models that you download yourself. You can go up, pick the model search that you want. You can pick ones of, in whatever your language of preferences. It'll go and confirm your hardware. You can see here that I've got an NVIDIA video card. I've got a 4080 Super. So it knows how much memory this computer has. This was a conversation in Swahili. I can then switch over to my list of models. These are quite small models, 9 gigs, 5 gigs. But then I've also got GPT, the open source version of GPT from OpenAI with 20 billion parameters rather than just 9 or 3. And we can try actually loading that up. And while that's happening, I'm going to open up Task Manager on my machine here. And I want you to look at the GPU and look in the lower corner here where it says shared GPU memory. And watch what's happening. We are loading that model into memory. Oops, down here rather. So I just took over 14 gigs. I was on the wrong video card. 14 gigs of my NVIDIA video card here. And now let's go and start a new conversation. Tell me a long story about Scott Hanselman giving a presentation to Smashing AI. So now, look at the GPU working hard. My fan just turned on. You can't hear that. To Markimus's point in the chat, is a small model running locally better for privacy? Absolutely. I could put this into airplane mode right now, and it would keep working. You can run this on your laptop. You can run this on your Mac. If you have a Copilot PC, you can use what's called an NPU. Right now, you notice that I have a CPU. I have 2 GPUs. And then on my laptop over here, I've got an NPU, a neural processing unit. And Macs, newer Macs have one on the system on a chip as well that allow you to have basically the tensors act on a specific processor. It's effectively a co-processor for AI. So yes, absolutely better. Stephanie Hobson, is a local model better for power usage? Abso-freaking-lutely. In this case here, I'm only using the power of the machine that I have here. And if I can then go and click on the developer section check this out. Now I can host that local model on localhost 1234, and I could do my work locally. I can ask those questions locally. Actually, I wonder if it knows my birthday. What is Scott Hanselman's birthday? No, it doesn't know. You can see it arguing with itself. And it says I'm from Cleveland. I'm not. I've never been to Cleveland. I'm from Portland. So in this case here, this is not grounded in anything, which is significant. This is not grounded. It's not talking to the web for proof, which brings us to our initial point as well. So we want to make sure that this is not a fact machine. It's not a pile of facts. It is a statistical model of words and how words live together in vector space and how we might put those words together. Smashing AI conference. And whether or not they have distance with each other or not. When we add in things like the web, databases, existing text that we have, we can use these for really useful stuff, like having conversations with a PDF is a useful tool, or a corpus of data that you have, but they are not fact machines. I am out of time, so I want to make sure that I am respectful to the break, and I think there might be a little bit of Q&A here as well. But if you want to learn more, go and take a look at my YouTube, and I've got 90-minute versions of a similar talk, and I want to encourage folks to check out my TED Talk because I'm really proud of it, and I worked really hard on it.
Hey, thanks so much, Scott. My gosh, you've given us a whole heck of a lot to think about here, and I really appreciate it. Um, you know, I I've always like heard that AI is described as like a fancy autocomplete. I love that you call it spicy autocomplete. That's like the whole Family Feud type deal of like what is the most likely answer to produce here. I like your demonstration of small models is really interesting. Do you see that as part of the path forward for how like us as end users are able to create the lens by which we prompt AI?
Yeah, I think that it's important to know that they exist. I think that regular people, non-technical parent, doesn't know that small models exist. They don't know that private models exist. On my iPhone, this is an iPhone 16, I use an app called MLC Chat. And MLC Chat lets you download models on your iPhone and run them in airplane mode.
Huh.
Now, to be clear, these are small models. They are quantized, they are squished, just like a JPEG. They've lost something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Take a raw file and squish it down into a 40K JPEG, it's going to lose something. The question is, did it lose something but not lose utility? So if I'm going to create a system and it's just calling OpenAI directly, and maybe it's asking to take some text and turn it into a coffee shop order, do I need the full power of the world computer to turn some text into a coffee shop order? I do not. Right? The world machine, like the OpenAI model, can write Star Wars and Shakespeare and do all kinds and create limericks. I'm just trying to take some text and turn it into a coffee shop order, make some JSON, and feed it into my app. You do not need a giant model to do that. So then imagine a slider bar and just start making the slider bar as small as possible. Could I do that work on a custom trained model, on a tiny open source model, on Llama, on Phi, on something small that could run on my local machine? A really great example are my good friends at the Story Graph. The Story Graph is a books club like Goodreads. Goodreads is Amazon, big giant company. Story Graph is a two-person company, Black woman-owned company. She wrote the whole thing, and Rob Freelo, who is their chief AI officer, does all of the AI himself, trains the models himself. They're private and they run on their local machines. So that when you're getting recommendations for books, they are very clear about their AI UX. They make sure that it's clear that this text was made with AI, and it used private local models, which are more eco-friendly and completely private. Lovely stuff. You should check them out. Actually, Nadia, who is the principal at Storygraph, just got in the newspaper in London. So yeah, test on the big models, but then when you get them working, you might end up, your computer, your system, your app that you're building might end up with 5 or 10 little models. Even something like GitHub Copilot has multiple small models. It's not just, I hate it when people say just, because it's so minimizing of all the hard work.
It's
They
a
don't
loaded term.
just throw text at ChatGPT. They have local models, they have router models. You're seeing this now with ChatGPT 5, where they have the fast versus thinking harder model. And I think we're going to start seeing local models on your Mac, on your Windows machine, that run locally and make decisions that are harmless, small decisions that are all local and private. And then they decide, well, I don't know, can I think harder? And then think harder will be, can I go off to the internet and think harder?
Now, how does the ability to contextualize a language model, like using small models or like contextual pieces of it to train it on very specific corpuses of information, how does that square with our ability to gaslight the system, as you showed earlier? Like being able to like provide that leading answer.
In
Like,
my experience, it's easier to gaslight small models. Big models know what they know. They're pretty strong. Small models, as we saw when I tried to tell it what my birthday was, it's not a JPEG of the entire internet, right? So it's picking up from little pieces of context that are left over. This small model probably does know Brad Pitt's birthday, but it doesn't know mine. It doesn't know yours.
I think that's just so fascinating. The fact that like really what we're doing is, we're putting different contexts almost in like warfare, in a sense, where it's like, different values are clashing, or different, filters or lenses of how we're processing information are being put together or mashed together.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like a really linear, or as linear as many of us think it is. You type in a thing and you get something back. Like this whole chain feels like it's so much bigger and more complex. What types of like practical things can we do to like be better like stick shift drivers of
I
AI?
love that. I know that we need to have our break as well, so
Yeah.
I'll be really efficient in my answer. We need to encourage everyone, ourselves, we need to remind ourselves and our kids and the young people in our lives to be systems thinkers. We're in a world right now where the system, the stack, is incredibly deep. And my 17-year-old can sit on the side of the road with a pocket supercomputer talking radio frequency on some crazy high gigahertz off to a tower. Think about the complexity of the stack to order a car. And a car with a stranger and candy comes to pick him up and deliver his butt safely to wherever he wants to go. If that car breaks down, it is not his problem. If the tire pops, it is not his problem. If the oil goes out, it is not his problem, because we've layered so many layers of abstraction on top of the stack, right? So if the internet went down, if the iPhone crashed, if there were a 0 day on the iPhone, if the browser was down, if T-Mobile went away, all of these things would prevent him from going from here to there. Understanding the complexity of that stack so that when the stack breaks, we can fix it is going to be essential. There are not a lot of software engineers on The Walking Dead, right? Who survives the zombie apocalypse? It's all the mechanics and the electricians and stuff like that. Not a lot of us over there, hey, I can reboot the router. Is that okay, Michonne? Those people don't exist. So make yourself useful, my friends.
Thank you so much, Scott, for injecting a human side to all the hype and the just all the noise that we hear around AI. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to like bring you back up in the panel discussion too, because it's going to be fun just to riff off of everyone's talks here and see how there's like good meshing between all these ideas. So thanks again. Virtual round of applause for Scott HANSELMAN, folks. My gosh, I just love that.